Welcome to the Economist in Your Ear podcast. If someone told you that the key to understanding modern class anxiety, inflation, and global trade was a car brand that didn't even exist 18 months ago, would you believe them?
I mean, on the surface, it sounds completely absurd, right? But if you actually look at driveways across the country right now, it's happening in real time.
It really is. Today, we are exploring an article titled The Rise of the Temu Range Rover. And our mission here is to look at how a brand new Chinese midsize SUV has essentially exposed the truth about modern consumer psychology.
Yeah, we are witnessing this massive shift where, strangely enough, skimping has become the new status symbol.
Exactly. And what's wild to me is just the stark contrast in the early reactions to this vehicle. Like if you read the traditional car experts, they absolutely hated it. They complained about the dull handling. They said it had, zero driving appeal, zero want one factor.
Right, they really laid into it.
But then you open up TikTok and everyday users are making these viral videos raving about the quote unquote fat sunroof and the massive touchscreen.
Which tells you so much about the disconnect between automotive purists and the actual buying public.
Oh, totally. It really feels like people have simply had enough of experts, which, by the way, I know is a direct echo of that famous line from the 2016 Brexit referendum campaign.
Yeah, like Michael Gove's infamous quote.
Yeah. But now that exact populist sentiment is basically dictating the entire car market. People don't care about a reviewer's take on, like, chassis dynamics. They just care about the cup holders and the monthly payment.
Well, what's fascinating here is how quickly traditional marketing logic has just been flipped on its head.
Right.
I mean, we are talking specifically about a car called the Jaecoo 7.
Right.
It's produced by Chery International, which is one of China's oldest car makers, though, they sell under various badges abroad. And this is a mid-size SUV. You can get it as a petrol or plug-in hybrid, and it starts at around 29,000 pounds.
Which, if you've looked at the price of a new car lately, your jaw probably just hit the floor.
Precisely. To put that 29,000 pounds in perspective, that is roughly a third less than the absolute cheapest Range Rover on the market.
And we should clarify for a second, because the Range Rover is really the ultimate flagship luxury Chelsea tractor for the posh school run. It's, that visual shorthand for suburban wealth. And this new Jaecoo car looks remarkably similar to it. It has that big upright grille, that squared-off silhouette. That's exactly why it's been nicknamed the Temu Range Rover.
Yeah, referencing Temu, the ultra-low-price Chinese shopping app.
Exactly, making Temu X the new British slang for a cheap lookalike of a prestige product.
And that nickname, even if it's meant to be slightly mocking, it should be a massive red flag for any legacy luxury brand.
Why is that?
Because we have to ask, how does a marquee with absolutely zero history, literally a badge that just launched into Europe months ago, gobble up decades of legacy brand equity? Brand equity is what marketers call the value of a recognized name, right? It's supposed to be this protective moat. It's supposed to take decades of heritage, motorsport victories, cultural cachet to build.
But the Jaecoo just bypassed all of that.
Totally. In March, this completely unknown vehicle became Britain's best-selling car, with over 10,000 registrations in a single month. It bypassed a century of automotive history overnight.
It's like a stranger showing up to a high school and immediately being voted prom king, not because they wore the right jacket, but because they're secretly paying for everyone's prom tickets.
That is a perfect analogy.
It just defies all the social rules we're used to. But this brings up a huge logistical question. I want to get into the mechanics of this. How are they physically selling so many? Because it's not actually just about that 29,000 pound sticker price, is it?
Not at all. It's really about the mechanics of the transaction itself. Chinese companies like Chery are just gagging for market share right now, and their primary weapon isn't just the sticker price, it is the financing. They are offering 0% APR deals with incredibly low deposits. And to understand why that's so lethal, you have to understand that the UK market is predominantly driven by PCP agreements or personal contract purchase.
Okay, let's unpack PCP for a second, because I think a lot of people just sign the paperwork without realizing what's actually happening under the hood.
Yeah, it's super common. With PCP, you aren't actually buying the car outright. You are essentially renting its depreciation over, say, 3 or 4 years.
Right.
You pay a deposit. You make monthly payments covering the value the car loses over that time, and then at the end, you either hand it back or pay a lump sum to keep it.
So because of that, the list price of a car is almost an illusion to the average buyer. The only number that truly dictates what consumers drive is that monthly payment.
Exactly. So when Chery comes in and offers 0% APR, they are subsidizing that financing cost entirely.
Got it. So to the buyer, a 29,000-pound Chinese SUV and a 29,000-pound European SUV might have wildly different monthly costs, purely based on who is eating the interest rate. Okay, but I have to push back here, though. Are people actually falling in love with this car, or are they just buying the 0% interest rate because they desperately missed the 2010s? Because reading the article, it feels like they aren't purchasing a vehicle, they're purchasing a financial time machine.
That's a brilliant way to frame it, actually. You're talking about what economists call the ghost of ZRRP, the zero interest rate policy of the 2010s.
Ah, right.
Yeah, for a decade following the financial crisis, the Bank of England kept the base rate near zero, which made cheap finance ubiquitous. During that era, cheap credit put premium German badges on ordinary driveways.
It completely transformed consumer expectations of what they could afford.
Exactly.
Right? That was the era that heavily elevated Mondeo Man, right? That 1990s shorthand for the aspirational middle-income voter who traditionally drove a mid-range Ford Mondeo, but whose ZRRP suddenly allowed to upgrade to an Audi.
Yes, exactly.
But, I mean, those historically low rates are gone now. We're living in a world of 5, 6, 7% mortgages, except apparently inside the double-glazed windows of the Jaecoo 7.
Right, inside that car, it is forever ZIRP. And if we connect this to the broader competitive landscape, you can see why this strategy is so devastating to legacy competitors.
Okay, they can't match the terms.
Right. By buying down the interest rate, Chery can dramatically undercut rivals on a monthly basis without technically cheapening the headline price of the car itself. They are offering psychological relief from the current economic reality.
But hold on, if it were solely about securing cheap finance and getting from point A to point B, these buyers could just go get a basic utilitarian hatchback, right? Like a Dacia or a Kia Picanto.
Sure, they could.
But they don't. They specifically want this large SUV because it mimics wealth during a very specific economic squeeze. I mean, everyone is talking about the Kazi lives, that jokey internet slang for the cost of living crisis.
Yeah, the Kazi lives.
But the article's framing here is really interesting because it makes a crucial distinction. It suggests that right now, for a lot of middle-class households, the crisis is actually squeezing small luxuries rather than bare necessities.
Yes, it's less a survival crisis for this demographic and more a cost of living well crisis.
Right.
Butter and olive oil might be outrageously expensive, and your mortgage might have doubled, but you can still get something that looks like a luxury SUV for £250 a month. The Jaecoo 7 directly addresses this psychological squeeze by offering the illusion of opulence.
But is it just an illusion? I mean, a 29,000-pound car with a big touchscreen is still just a 29,000-pound car? Surely buyers know the build quality isn't actually that of a 90,000-pound Range Rover. Are we just that easily distracted by shiny pop-out handles?
Well, it's not really about being tricked. It's about the signaling. The car has heated seats, it has those disconcerting flush pop-out door handles, and all the appropriately squidgy interior finishes that signal high-end manufacturing.
Right, the aesthetics.
Exactly. It provides the aesthetic of wealth, which softens the blow of feeling poorer in other areas of life.
It's fascinating how it taps into the psyche of the squeezed middle class. You can't read the Daily Telegraph, the broadsheet, famous for articles about well-off households complaining they feel impoverished after paying their private school fees, without sensing this pervasive financial anxiety.
Oh, absolutely.
People who, on paper, are doing fine, mentally feel completely broke.
And that leads to a profound psychological shift, which brings us to inverted snobbery.
Okay, inverted snobbery. Tell me about that.
Well, in a country where people increasingly feel they get rich by saving money rather than making it, mostly because wages have stagnated, skimping has actually become its own status symbol.
Wow, really?
Yeah. Buying a knockoff isn't shameful anymore. It's seen as a savvy financial flex. Why spend a year's worth of school fees on a real Range Rover when you can get the aesthetic equivalent for a fraction of the cost and then brag to your neighbors about the savings?
I think we have to critically interpret that, though. Like, is it truly inverted snobbery, or is it just a market correction? Maybe legacy brands just overplayed their hand by pricing their cars into the stratosphere, and consumers are just rationally refusing to play the game anymore.
That's a very fair point.
It really blurs the lines of traditional status. You even see it intersecting with government programs. Look at the Motability Scheme, which is that UK disability benefit program for leased cars.
Right. Yeah.
After public backlash a while ago, they restricted Audis and BMWs from the scheme because it looked like taxpayer money was funding luxury vehicles. But the Jaecoo is allowed on it simply because it only looks fancy.
It slips right through the bureaucratic net.
Exactly, because it lacks the legacy badge, even though it provides the exact same visual status on the street.
Which perfectly illustrates the complete disconnect between aesthetic value and brand prestige today. And, this obsession with securing a bargain over maintaining brand loyalty, it isn't just a quirky consumer trend. It is actively dictating national trade policy.
All right, let's bridge that gap. Because it's one thing for a car to conquer the school run, but when a foreign company takes over 15% of the market this fast, doesn't the government step in? Like, what does this mean for the macroeconomy?
Well, it means we are in uncharted territory. We have to remember that Britain currently has no volume scale, domestically owned mass market car maker left. All the major manufacturing plants are foreign owned.
So there isn't really a national champion brand for consumers to feel deeply loyal to, the way French drivers might fiercely defend Renault or Peugeot or Italians with Fiat.
Exactly. Because of that vacuum, British consumers genuinely do not care where a car comes from. And the numbers absolutely prove it. Chinese brands went from about 1% of new UK sales at the start of the decade to around 15% today.
Wow.
That is the highest share of any large European market.
And historically, this preference for price over patriotism is deeply embedded in the culture, isn't it? It echoes all the way back to the repeal of the Corn Laws in 1846.
Oh, yeah.
Those 19th century tariffs on imported grain, which is essentially the classic British historical reference for cheapness beating out patriotism. When faced with the choice between protecting domestic interests and accessing cheap goods, the consumer invariably chooses the latter.
Precisely.
Which puts current politicians in a very tricky spot. Just to look at this impartially for a second, unlike the European Union and the United States, Britain hasn't imposed heavy tariffs on cheap Chinese cars.
No, they haven't.
You have parties like Reform UK calling for tariffs to protect the wider market. But the historical precedent is overwhelmingly clear. Any politician who attempts to stand between the British public and a cheap car is essentially volunteering to get run over at the ballot box.
It's a very, very tight line to walk. Do you prioritize international trade considerations, geopolitical security, and the pleas of legacy manufacturers, or
do you cater to a voting public that is actively seeking relief from inflation?
Exactly. The Jaecoo 7 isn't just a consumer good. It is a physical manifestation of this policy dilemma driving down the M25.
And what's wild is that while it's causing headaches in Westminster, it seems to be achieving what marketers consider the absolute holy grail, the classless product.
Yes, because if a product appeals to tight budget bargain hunters and wealthy private school parents simultaneously, it transcends traditional demographic buckets. That is incredibly rare.
The article compares it to the Mini, right? The 1960s classic car that was driven equally by factory workers and by rock stars like Mick Jagger down Carnaby Street.
Yeah, that's the dream for any brand entering a new market. You want to create something that completely defies social stratification. We see this with smaller items today, too, like the Stanley Flask.
Oh, right, that oversized insulated cup that became a massive social media status object for younger mums across all income brackets.
Exactly, but doing it with a 29,000-pound piece of machinery is exponentially harder than doing it with a 40-pound water bottle.
Yet they seem to be pulling it off, and they're doing it by actively recruiting establishment credibility while winking at the mass market. Like, their brand ambassador is Chris Robshaw, the former England rugby captain.
Right.
And he was educated at Millfield, which is an elite private school whose 60,000-pound fees equal, what, 2 Jaekoos a year?
Just about, yeah.
But at the exact same time, the car appeals to a totally mass market sensibility. The article describes it as the automotive equivalent of Ant and Adenic, the highly popular, unpretentious TV duo.
It's essentially a Barrett home on wheels.
Yes.
Yeah.
Referencing those mass-market practical new-build homes that are slightly derided by architectural snobs, but eagerly bought by everyone else.
And that dual identity derided by the traditionalists, but thoroughly enjoyed and consumed by the masses, is what makes its market penetration so ruthlessly effective. It doesn't need to be universally loved by critics. It just needs to be universally acceptable to the buyer's wallet and their ego.
It really makes you wonder if the legacy brands have fundamentally misunderstood what the modern consumer actually values. I mean, the Jaecoo 7 might be manufactured in China, but its pragmatic, bargain-hunting, slightly cynical appeal makes it as British as can be in the current economic climate.
It certainly leaves us with a profound question to consider regarding the future of global commerce. If a brand with absolutely no history can conquer a mature, highly competitive market just by mimicking the aesthetics of luxury and offering subsidized credit, what is the future for traditional legacy luxury?
Right.
Are these 100-year-old marques simply trying to sell heritage to a new generation of consumers that genuinely only cares about the monthly payment and the size of the sunroof? If heritage no longer commands a premium, the entire automotive industry is in for a very rough awakening.
Thanks for listening. Follow us for daily insights into world affairs, and don't forget to like, comment, and share.